I'm going to assume from your empty plate that my cooking wasn't entirely awful. Good. I must confess to feeling a little out of practice. Spinner's End isn't exactly a place one brings a guest, much less one I would wish to impress. Still, I like having you here with me. Would you like some more wine? Though I should warn you, this particular vintage has a certain weight to it, a consequence of my discerning taste. I hope this isn't the wrong time to ask this, but have you noticed anything untoward recently, back at the castle? Any whispers? Any lingering looks? I ask because Albus has taken to asking me some rather probing questions of late. Nothing overt, of course, just enough to suggest that he may suspect something between us. Obviously, I denied everything. I have rather perfected the art of deflection where the headmaster is concerned, but I'm afraid the man is not easily deceived. Have you sensed anything? Anyone at the castle who might be growing wise to us? Good. Should Albus make his mind up about us, I would at least trust him to be discreet. I could not say the same for the rest of our colleagues. Stay where you are. I'll deal with this. Tell me, would it be wildly optimistic of me to assume I should prepare breakfast as well? Or will you be making your escape before dawn? The whole weekend? Good. For once, I won't have to share you with the rest of the world. Are you going to join me on the sofa, or must I extend a formal invitation? What? Oh, yes. I tend to keep magic to a minimum here. This is a Muggle neighborhood. Using magic is not strictly forbidden, but frequent anomalies would undoubtedly raise questions. And I have no desire to draw attention to myself. Here, I am what I have always been to them. Just him. The man who keeps to himself. The strange one at the end of the street. It's easier that way. A long time. It was my mother's house. I grew up here, if you can call it that. It hasn't changed much. Not that there was ever much to change. I imagine it's not quite what you expected. After my mother died, The house was left to me. I could have left it to rot. Perhaps I should have. And yet here we are. For all its faults, Spinner's End is familiar, predictable. It asks nothing of me, and in return, I asked nothing of it. My childhood here was what it was. This house has always been the same. Small, unremarkable. A house in a row of houses, filled with people who had neither the time nor inclination to care about what happened behind someone else's door. My mother did her best. She was quiet, kind in her way. A witch in a place where being one meant nothing at all. And my father was a man best forgotten. I didn't spend much time here once I had the choice to leave. Hogwarts was preferable, if you can believe that. You needn't look at me like that. It was a long time ago. And as you can see, I survived. He was a cruel man, not always in a way that left bruises. He preferred his cruelty to be quieter. A sharp tongue, a grip that lingered just long enough to remind you, a presence that filled the house like smoke, suffocating everything in its path. My mother bore it in silence. I was less inclined to. I learned early that there was no reasoning with a man who needed no reason to be angry. No placating someone who only found satisfaction in control. I imagine I was a bitter disappointment. My mother's blood ensured that. A son who defied him in ways he could never understand, and worst of all, one who refused to fear him the way he wished I would. He despised me. And in time the feeling became mutual. But he is gone, and I remain. Make of that what you will. I would prefer not to speak of him further tonight. He's not worth the breath. Why? Because it is mine. I could have left, sold it, let it fall to ruin, like so many other places in this town. And yet, I didn't. It is not sentimentality, if that's what you're imagining. There is no fondness in the memories these walls hold. But leaving this house behind would not undo what happened here. It would not rewrite the past, nor change who I became because of it. And so, I stayed. Or rather, I let it stay. Besides, it's quiet. And I have always found comfort in quiet. Happy memories. There were moments, small things mostly. The river was quiet at dawn. The mills, ugly as they were, always seemed to hum at the same pitch, a sound I learned to find tolerable, perhaps even familiar. I suppose, if I think hard enough, there were days that were not entirely unbearable. There was a girl once, someone who made this place seem less miserable than it was. Just out of interest, do you intend to make me recount my entire childhood this evening? Because if that is the case, I may need to open another bottle of wine. I must say, the house feels very different with you in it, as though it is becoming something more than just a passing refuge or a temporary retreat. It feels like it has purpose. It feels alive, alive in a way I didn't ever envisage being possible. What was that for? Are you warm enough? Good. I've never been accused of being attentive before. You obviously bring it out of me. You bring out a lot of things. I've spent the majority of my life ensuring that people know as little about me as possible. And then you come along, with your insufferable charm and that irritatingly perceptive gaze, and suddenly I feel as though keeping my walls up is no longer worth the effort. What's even more disconcerting is that I find myself increasingly yearning to open up to you. What have you done to me? Is it wrong that I rather enjoy watching you struggle with my buttons? You do realize that magic exists precisely to spare us from such tedious endeavors. Very well. I suppose there is something to be said for delayed gratification. After all, I never rush when I'm undressing you. Speaking of which,